Hey there neighbors, Kevin here with eTrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the REDARC Tow-Pro Liberty Trailer Brake Controller here in our 2020 Honda Ridgeline. So if you own a Honda Ridgeline, you probably want to do some truck stuff with it, and that is going to require a couple of different components. And your truck might come with some of them, but it definitely is not going to come with a trailer brake controller, so that way you can actuate the brakes on the trailer behind you and come to a nice, complete, and safe stop, so that way you're not running into the car in front of you. When it comes to trailer brake controllers, there are plenty of options that are going to be compatible with your Ridgeline, but there's only going to be one that is going to be the best for it, and that's going to be the Tow-Pro Liberty, because we're no longer going to have that knee knocker style hunk of plastic sitting in our way. So every single time we get in the car or we're sitting here for a long drive, we got our knee hitting against it the entire time we are in the vehicle. With this, we've got a simple button that's just a little control knob that's going to go from 0 all the way up to 10 to control our gain. For manual override, all we have to do is press in on it and it'll give us the same amount of power as what we're at gain-wise here. And then the rest of this is all going to be hidden up inside of our dash. And with the Ridgeline already having a factory tow package, it made this install a whole lot easier, because instead of having to actually find the cold side of our brake light switch, get power and ground, all we had to do was just simply plug in our custom fit harness into our factory connector, which is hidden just above our little quarter panel right here under our dash. Now, if you don't have the factory tow package, which means you probably don't also have a 7-way at the back of your vehicle, then you're going to need to pick up a few other components. Starting out, you'll need to, at minimum, have a 4-pole wire harness, which is going to be just transferring over those light signals from your vehicle to the trailer. If you don't have that, you can definitely check out our fit guide and figure out exactly which one is going to be the correct fit for your specific model. From there, you can pick up our ETBC7 kit, which is going to plug into that 4-pole wire harness, and then it's also going to have some additional wiring that you're going to need to run. There'll be a wire that's going to run up into the engine compartment so that you can attach to the battery, get your power, so you'll have that 12-volt power back at the 7-way. You'll also have a wire that you're going to run up and then run into the dash, so that way you can get that brake controller output signal. So from our brake controller itself, so that's the blue wire when you're playing with the actual universal harness. And then the other harder part of this is honestly just getting to the cold side of the brake light switch, which for that, what you'll need to do is test each wire coming off of the brake pedal, see which one only has power when the brake pedal is being depressed, and that one is going to be your cold side. You'll need to splice into that and then run that to the red wire on the universal harness. Now, install can be pretty difficult if it is that splicing kit, just because it's a lot more time consuming. It's not going to be as quick as just popping in that harness. Now, if you do get down there and figure out that you have that harness, you can most likely also find a harness at the back somewhere that you could plug into, even if you don't think you have the factory tow package. So do just a little bit of investigating, see exactly what you got down there. Even though you might not have the 7-way, there might be a plug-in option that's going to work and make that install a lot faster for you. Now, if you feel like this is a bit daunting, it's going to be too much for you, or you just don't have the time to do it, definitely feel free to use our dealer locator, and you can enter in your zip code to find a shop near you and get it professionally installed. If you are wanting to do this yourself and you just want a little bit of help along the way, stick around and I'll walk you through the process. So to begin our install, I've done a little bit of investigating already. I found where our factory harness sits, so it's going to look like the male version of this style connector right here. Now that's going to live up inside of our dash. It's just a little bit above this piece of plastic here. You'll see it, it's gray and it's poking right down. Super easy to get to. It is taped, so not much room. You got about 2 inches kind of where you can kind of maneuver it, but it is somewhat easy to get to. Now the other thing, where we're actually going to mount up our control knob, that's going to be right below here. This is where our neighbor wanted it, and it's wide open back there behind the dash. We'll actually pop this out probably, so that way we can get our drilling through. I just want to kind of check what all I have to disconnect first before we get too far into it. And then for mounting up our main control unit here, I've got this bracket, so there's not really a lot of good spaces to place this. You are going to need some kind of bracket or scrap metal that you can bend and make into your own bracket. This one is just the scrap piece that we had left over. It's a bracket for an Air Force One fitting, so this is what would the air fitting would mount to, and then mount to the back of the vehicle or the front of the vehicle, depending on if it's a motorhome or the towed vehicle. And I'm using that because there's a metal bracket that sits kind of just straight down with a hole in it for a push pin fastener. That's right in between our dash here and our parking brake. So this is going to pop right on there. I've got the essentially angle iron that's going to mount to our 2 tabs, or 2 openings in our mounting tab on our bracket, or our main unit. And then this side of our bracket, we got 1 hole. I've just ran a bolt through it with some flat washers and a lock washer, and I'm going to run that up through there. Now I did pop off a relay through that bracket. It was just a little push pin, and then there was another one that was open a little bit further up, so I just moved it over so I'd have more room for our main unit. Now, if yours is a little bit different, you might have to zip tie that relay out of the way just because you don't have that extra spot like I did. That's still okay. Just make sure it's nice and secure so it's not rattling around and hitting stuff while it's in there. But with all that said, I'm going to get under here and we can start getting some of our stuff actually installed. Alright, I'm going to start by popping out this side piece here. This should just pull straight out. It's got push pins. I've already kind of started prying on this side just to investigate, and you can see I've popped this out. You can see the white from the push pin right there. There's the second one right there. Third one down there. There's probably more going all down along this, but I'm going to pop this piece out so I can actually verify, make sure there's no screws or anything hidden inside of here. No screws, just push pins. There we go. Now we do have to be careful though because there are harnesses still plugged in here. But once again, good way to check, verify that we have plenty of room, which we do. Now the other thing I'm a little worried about here is just how thick this is. We'll probably have to take our grinding bit and just grind a little bit of the inside of this out just so that we can get to the right thickness so that the control knob can actually fully sit through this and we can get enough space for the button to compress so that way when we hit the manual override it's actually going to function. So with our panel removed, I was kind of eyeballing where our switch is going to sit, and unfortunately I was really wanting to get a little bit higher up, but that's going to have me interfering with our other switches that we have. So we are going to have to be pretty low, having the actual knob portion of our switch, not the little light, have that in line with the little Honda imprint that they have. That should have me low enough to where I can still get the connector in here, and not have it be an issue. So I eyeballed that on the other side. I'm drawing some lines down to kind of stay within the same as that switch there, so that way it kind of looks a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. But this dot right here is where I'm going to have my light come out. So this is going to sit a little bit lower than what I was originally wanting, but that's what we're going to have to do space-wise. So starting out, I'm going to drill out the hole for our light. That's that little guy right there. We're going to be using an 1/8 inch drill bit. Now that we drilled that hole, I am going to use my face plate, which is going to actually sit on here first. And we can mark out the hole, the drill, for our knob to actually come through. Do a circle there, and then we can mark our center out. Not really centered. There, it looks better. So I'll start drilling right there. Now, most of the time you end up having to actually kind of wobble this into that top piece just because the little plastic that sticks out typically is going to want a little bit more room than what that 1/8 inch hole gives you. So once we get this out, I'll probably also just kind of cut a hole between the two. So like I was talking about, the hole, like the plastic on the faceplate, plus also the plastic that we have right here, this little black piece right here, needs a little bit more space. So what I typically like to do is just cut out that last little bit between the two. And I'll probably have to clean this up a little bit more with my razor blade on the inside before we start using the burr bit and kind of cutting down on the thickness of our dash here so this will fit right. Flip it over. All right, so to show you what I did, I took my burr bit to the back here and just kind of ground down a little bit around it. You want to give it enough room so that the black pieces here, the plastic, it's these guys right here that you need to have kind of sitting in nice and flush. So that way we get enough room to where we can get down to those threads. So we've got this little nut here that's got to get through the thickness of our dash and then actually thread onto our control knob here. So once you got that down enough, and obviously that's, you know, going to take a little bit of playing around with to get just perfect. I also kind of went up a size, so they tell you to do an 1/8 inch bit. I went up to a 7/64. Just made that a little bit wider, so that way the little bit of plastic that's on our faceplate could sit in there a little bit easier and not kind of stick out, because it still is kind of wanting to fight us. Just kind of cleaned out a little bit more hole on the hole here, just because there's a little bit of burr left. But once we have all that how we want it, go back, we'll throw our switch, our control knob in from the back, grab our faceplate, put that in place, grab our nut, drop that in, we can start tightening it down, and you don't want to go too tight with this. You want to make sure that you're just getting it snug, and if you need to with a wrench, it's going to be a 12 millimeter. Right there. All right, now we can go reinstall our dash and start rehooking up our connections. So I had 6 connectors, 2 here, 4 here. I labeled them all with some painter's tape and a marker. And then we have our connection for our brake controller. On this other side, there was a vent here. I just popped that out. We're just gonna pop that right back in. Might be a little bit different on your specific setup, but just make sure that you're putting everything back together the way it was when you took it apart. All right, now before I put the dash back on, just so we can kind of get a little bit better of a visual when I'm mounting this up. So like I said, I did end up using a Air Force One air fitting bracket to match this up. So if you wanted to pick that up, you could, or just find literally any kind of angled bracket that you got laying around, or you can pick one up from a hardware store. It doesn't have to be this specific one. And then I'm just gonna bolt this on. I've got flat washers to kind of take up some of the gap. Just a little bit more pressure, and then a lock washer and a nut to finish it off with. So I am going to switch over to a little bit longer of a bolt, and then we can mount this back up. There we go. That ain't moving now. So right here is the relay I was talking about earlier. It was mounted right over here where we were mounting up our main unit. I just popped that out, moved it over to this bracket because it was wide open, same style opening for the push pin, so fit in there real nice. This is in here nice and tight, so at this point we can start making our connections with our wiring. Now, probably should have put the REDARC side of this in first, just because this is a bit tight over here. I think I might also run a zip tie through our bracket and then up to this bracket too, just to give it a little bit more stability on the other end too. Now for the factory side of this, we're going to get our wire harness hooked in. I'm going to need to grab like a screwdriver or something so I can get some pressure, maybe, or there we go. And then we can just tuck our wiring up behind our dash here. You can zip tie it up, get it up out of the way, or you can even just kind of shove it down into this panel back here because there's plenty of space. Now for the connection to our control knob, we're going to have this Ethernet style cable. You'll see one side is straight, one side is a 90-degree bend. I'm going to have to kind of see if I got enough room here, so I'm going to get my dash a little bit put back together here. I want to make sure that my wiring doesn't interfere with any of the other stuff here. And then we can actually pop it in. All right, so we did have enough room for that straight end to clear it, which is exactly what I was wanting. So that way we can have the right angle go towards the end because it's sticking down a bit. I want to kind of tuck that away as best I can. Now make sure you're looping that through so that way it's lining up once we put our dash back in place. Should come right out there. Yep. All right, now I'm going to plug the rest of my connectors in. And like I said, I labeled each one of these just to make sure we're always putting them back right. Now, most likely, they probably aren't able to mix and match just because they do look like they're all different. But never hurts just to go the extra step and get that labeled. All right. Now we can pop the dash back in. Alright, with our dash reinstalled, we'll want to turn our little dial all the way counterclockwise. And on our dial, our control knob here, we're going to want to go for 0. And we'll line that up at the top. And you can see I pressed in on it and it's turning blue, and that's telling us that it's getting power. Now the next step is to actually hook up to a trailer so that way it can sense the load on it. And it'll start blinking blue and green, and that's just telling us that it wants to calibrate itself. So it's trying to learn its orientation so that way it knows where it's at, and then it can start to sense deceleration so that way it can actually kick in and send that brake signal back to the trailer when it senses the vehicle start to slow down. So now that we're hooked up, you can kind of see it. It might be a little hard just with the lighting. You can see it's blinking red now and green. Blue and green when I let off the brakes, but it is trying to orient itself right now, so it's calibrating. So essentially what you want to do is just drive around for a little bit, hit the brakes, try to get up to like 25 miles per hour a couple times, and then hit the brakes, and it should calibrate itself in just a couple of minutes. You can see right there, it didn't start blinking again, so that tells us we're already calibrated. I only hit the brakes twice, so pretty quick, easy to do. And we should be all good to go. Our brake controller is calibrated now, totally fine to take our vehicle and trailer out on an adventure.